Wow. Thank you very much, James. That's a great introduction. I really appreciate that. It's actually been an interesting 2021. This time last year, it was pretty much only investors that were out looking at properties. This year, it's a combination of investors, as they always come out in December, but I also have some buyers that are very anxious. In our weekly meeting this morning, my gratitude was to be hopefully grateful that a couple of properties were going to fall onto the MLS to satisfy what these buyers were looking for, because they are ready to pull the trigger ASAP. And so we've been frantically out looking. And so that does show that the market continues to be busy. I know everybody in the Edmonton market is wonderfully still very busy for December. So Jen, I don't know if you've got that slide ready to go. Whether that pops up or not, I will list off a few numbers here, just because we'll briefly cover the numbers before we kind of get into what this means. So November this year to November last year, and I always like to point out, if you are interested in the updated numbers, they do come out about the second or third day of the following month for the previous month. So December stats will be out with the long weekend, probably around January 4th. November is up this year from last year over 31%, and I'll talk about that in a second, but it is down 2% from October, so we are slowly starting to get into that fall sag like we always do in the Alberta and Edmonton market. New listings are up 16% from last year, but down 18% from October. Single-family home sales are up 24% from last year, but they're down 1% from October. This is, again, all November stats. Overall prices are floating around $384,000 for an average. Single family homes are $457,000. I know that sounds like pocket change for our BC Vancouver viewers, but that's big money here in Edmonton. Single family homes averaged 42 days on market. Condos are at 61 days, duplexes 53, and overall we're at 49. That's all down from last year, which is great to see. So again, what does all this mean? Well, we're kind of a little bit back. I've been calling it a soft balanced market for the past little bit. I talked before about, why is November up 30% from last year? Well, the world was very different a year ago. My kids were homeschooling. We were definitely into another wave. Vaccinations weren't out yet. People had a lot less knowledge about COVID and a lot more fear. This year, we've got the vaccinations, people are out and about in Alberta, and so that translates into a lot more activity. Expectations for Edmonton and for Alberta are that things are going to continue to go on. Not to the level of where things are at. I love telling stories because it's like a different world in BC and Ontario for us. I was chatting with somebody today who's based out of Toronto, and he's taken an interest in Edmonton because of our cash flow opportunity. And he was telling me that he's a developer, and he was telling me of a lot, 63 by 120 lot in Toronto, no building, just bare land. They had it up for sale for $2.5 million. Everyone in the office was saying, that's absolutely insane. No one will ever buy that for $2.5 million. 34 offers, and it sold for $3.5 million. That's what's going on in Ontario right now. Certainly not the case in Edmonton or in Alberta, and that's why a lot of people from BC and Ontario are looking at Edmonton and Alberta as a great place to invest. You can still find great cash flowing properties. We have a lot of uncertainty moving forward in Alberta, as we do everywhere else. Obviously, COVID, there's a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to come over the course of the next few months. But the big difference is that we continue to be a lot more educated than we were a year ago. There's been a lot of action takers. That certainly was a conversation that we had in the breakout room before we started at 7 o'clock. If you're taking action, you're going to be successful. You're going to make things happen. There's a lot of investors and a lot of buyers that are out there. The market continues to be robust. And also quietly, oil and gas comes back. This was a big news story about 3 weeks ago, but not a lot of even Edmontonians or Albertans caught onto this. The government, obviously because of where oil and gas is, budgeted quite low in the amount of revenue that they were going to receive from oil and gas. But oil and gas has quietly moved up. And the government of Alberta was able to put an additional $12 billion with a B to the deficit. It was found money. The finance minister basically went on record to say, hey, look, we know that we can't go with this up, down, boom and bust economy anymore. However, oil and gas, there's such big revenues that come in when oil and gas starts to creep up for a price that we have to continue to rely on it for the next few years, several years to come. And it's definitely not necessarily going anywhere. So that was some big news, and certainly showed that Alberta was moving in the right direction. And so there's a lot of quiet optimism. I think that we actually look forward in Alberta having a little bit more of sustainable growth, and we do expect that to happen moving into 2022. So for anybody that's outside of Alberta, it's a great place to come and invest. And if you want to chat some more, just reach out to one of the Mogul agents, and we'd be happy to fill you in more on opportunities. That's it for Edmonton. James, you're muted.
Well, that would explain why you weren't reacting to what I was saying. Thanks so much for the market update, Devin. Appreciate it. Appreciate the insight. And yeah, I mean, I got to agree with Devin. I mean, we looked at the stats from Vancouver, 20% growth. The bidding war that he described, not particularly unusual out here either. So we're also seeing that in major markets in Canada, like that you wouldn't expect. So I wouldn't even call them major markets, but other like St. John, New Brunswick, Halifax. There's a lot of interesting places in Canada that are growing, and we've seen tons and tons and tons of inflation. And so, you know, some of you and some of us might be sitting in Alberta thinking, well, when the heck is it our turn? Well, we're kind of like the runt of the litter. We're the last one to the party, but inflation is hitting the planet heavy. And so I think for people that have a bit of a future-oriented investment approach, it's going to be a good little window to get into Edmonton before inflation catches up here. Because while it hasn't hit Edmonton, I don't think that there's any doubt that Edmonton is going to equalize in terms of what the rest of the Canadian market has done. So I would say keep your eyes peeled for some great growth in the Edmonton market heading into the next year.